felt that when you punch a cow, the cow should actually punch back, and then you should be murdered by an unrelated aggressive frog. If so, RLCraft is for you, because it did come to Bedrock recently, and it's a lot of fun, but also at 1690 minecoins, or $10 US, you'd be forgiven for wanting more information before purchasing, and so that's exactly what I want to do for you in today's review, because hello, I'm RLCraft, and this is by far the most enthralling piece of marketplace content that I've ever played, but it's also by far the strangest, and so there's probably lots of questions you have, and I want to answer them in today's 5-part review, starting with the background, because you might feel like you've heard of RLCraft before, and that's because it comes from a Java mod of the same name by Shivaxi. It has been officially licensed, which means that although the Bedrock version is developed by Honeyfrost, they are paying the original creator in exchange for using it, but it is worth mentioning that it's barely related to its Java counterpart in terms of actual gameplay, and so we're going to start with a brief description of the differences between the Java version and the Bedrock one. On Java, there is a bundle of mods that were combined to make the challenge that is RLCraft, whereas on Bedrock, it was all designed from the ground up to be unique content, but crucially, it is a dynamic world and not an add-on. This means you can't apply it to an existing world, it's not a mod in that way, instead you have to start an RLCraft specific world, and as a result, they're able to have a tutorial, which is both nice and necessary, and a difficulty select in the game. But of course, since it is Bedrock, it is buggier and contains far fewer features. For example, the Java edition actually has a nether with exclusively created content that is just missing on Bedrock. It was sad when I went there for the first time. The end is also the same, and even the underground experience is severely lacking in content. These are things that Honeyfrost say will be included in future updates, but right now there is just less content on the Bedrock version than the Java, and that is kind of a shock given that the Bedrock version costs $10. The Java version costs nothing, by the way, but what's interesting to note is the fact that the Bedrock version does come with higher quality animations, and indeed you will get updates that can work for a single click inside of the game, and so we're not going to judge too hardly on the price just yet until we dive into what exactly is, because you might think that you know about RLCraft, but because it is different on Bedrock, what is the actual aim of this very expensive game? Well, let's start with the basics. So after the tutorial and the difficulty select, you will spawn into the world with a dramatic fall, but you can't punch any logs, because like in real life, this hurts. Instead, you'll need to use flint, bash it against some rocks, and combine it with some sticks from breaking leaves to make yourself a knife, which can then be used to make a flint axe, which can then be used to make a wooden axe, and from there the game works like normal, except no, it has a minimum level requirement. Everything has a minimum level requirement, and you'll need to kill things to get to that. However, when cows and even cats are hostile to you, that is easier said than done. Oh, also, you'll need to be constantly on the run because hostile mobs spawn everywhere all of the time. Also, you have a thirst meter, which has to be topped up by either drinking or jumping in water. I know the way I love to hydrate is by jumping in the river, and also hot and cold biomes will raise and lower your temperature, and any damage taken will then damage your limbs. Ouch, ruining your ability to punch or to run. These are crazy parts of RLCraft that are there to make it harder, and so you might just say it's Minecraft but harder in every way. Yes, in a sense, but there's also things that are more powerful than regular Minecraft, such as backpacks, oh my god, and unique gear that will eventually far surpass the Minecraft defaults. So that is the basics of what is going on here. Minecraft but harder, but really Minecraft but an RPG that exists to get you towards the big bosses, but is it actually good? Well, let's split the review into two parts, the good and the bad. So let's start with the good side of RLCraft for Bedrock, and I think the easiest thing to point to would be the challenge. This is something I find amazing because so much of the marketplace appeals to people who want to be given free diamonds or a jetpack, and personally I think that's kind of pointless. I would use creative if I wanted Minecraft to be easy, but I want something that provides depth and that isn't afraid to make me work for it. This is something RLCraft does amazingly. Whether it is a giant spider deciding to attack you and ruin your life, whether it is the random bears spawning, or whether it's anything in between, the challenge in this is perfect. It is almost sometimes sadistic in how much it wants to hurt you, but the fact that you can overcome that sadism is what makes it so good. I love that there are so many types of challenge, and it's all made possible by the dynamic world. Every time you die, you don't just go back to your world spawn point, instead it moves you randomly around that world, making dying without a spawn point amazingly punishing, but also the world isn't pre-built well, this is a dynamic world, which means that just like Minecraft, everything from the structures to where you find the mobs and the biomes is all moving around too. I personally think there is a little bit of incongruency between the game structures and the naturally generated ones, but what I do love is the fact that there is a real sense of exploration as you go around those new structures, because it's not just generic houses. I mean, okay, there are generic houses, but there's also deep dungeons and giant structures that appear out of nowhere, and actually exploring these is great. I also love the RPG mechanics. It's something that Minecraft kind of lacks after the early game, and so they use Minecraft's level system to make a level system. That's actually genius, and it means the progression can follow your character, and so even though when you're alive you're getting more powerful by getting better gear, even when you die you end up more powerful and able to get back to where you were before, and you feel like one day those alligators that chased you will meet their match, and this is what you need in a game that is meant to be ridiculously hard. You need to one day feel like you're going to be able to beat them up yourself, even if it's not necessarily true. That hope is one of the things that really carried me through, but ultimately I think that although there's a lot of good things to say, it all comes down to the challenge, to the structures, and to those RPG mechanics. But when it comes to the bad, let's just say there's a bit more. So I think the simplest way you could sum up the bad would be that sometimes it's just random bullshit that kills you rather than an actual challenge. Spider Queen? No, I don't know what a Spider Queen is, but I'm not ready for it. It feels like bosses spawn for no real reason a lot of the time, and they are so seriously hard to kill that you might as well not bother for most of your run, meaning that there's just something random that's come in to make you not able to go in an area, which might be fine by itself if the argument here was meant to be realism, but I would say realism is very much taking a heavy backseat. For something called RLCraft, that is meant to be like real-life Minecraft, I've got to say it has very few realism elements, and personally I don't mind on that. I like the difficulty, but RLCraft then feels a bit misleading as a name. Indeed, going a step further on this, I would say there is extreme structure duplication. I mean, the very first time I spawned into my long-term world, I found this many boats around me, but more seriously, then looking around the world further, it happens everywhere I go. I mean, let me show you an easy example here. This is a lovely campsite I found in my adventures. It's a structure that isn't out to kill you, but gives you two little bonuses, and look at how it's a bed next to a campfire with this fun thing in the background, because then I saw some plumes literally 30 blocks away, and I followed them, and what do I find over there? Well, it's a bed with a trapdoor behind it, a campsite, and then the same exact blocks in the background. Now, to be fair, the reason that this is an exact duplicate 10 blocks away technically isn't the fault of RLCraft. It is a Minecraft limitation with how structures generate. You can't add custom structures right now, so the cheating way to do it is to add custom features, but as someone who loves structures, it means you can't add any variation. It means you can't add minimum spacing, and those are such critical flaws that I've chosen personally just not to release structures until they can be fixed. But it means that, yeah, even if we ignore the fact that we've got the exact same tower in the background and the foreground, this is something that happens all the time in RLCraft for Bedrock, and it just feels a bit weird. Again, some of the joy of a structure is meant to be that it's a piece of terrain, an oasis in a sea of hostility. But what's crazy about it is the fact that you can often, frequently even, find two of the same structure next to each other, or even worse, even if they're not directly next to each other, you'll still find that same structure over and over again before finding an actually new unique one, and this is just a little bit of a shame in the way it generates, that it doesn't seem like there's an easy fix for, but the fact that this one world has so many examples should be a comment as to how common it is. By the way, I would also say the trading is a really fun idea, and it does just about work once you get the hang of it, but it's one of those weird parts of the game that isn't very well explained. Also, by the way, you get warp stones at every one of these structures, which feels very powerful, and it's something I like as a way to make the world more explorable. But again, like, you get warp stones that literally spawn this far apart, and it removes some of the joy and the value and the feeling of that experience, just like how finding one diamond is amazing, but finding a vein of 6,000 diamonds would just feel a little bit over the top. That's how I feel about the structure designs. I like them. They're really, really well put together. Honeyfrost have done an incredible job, but then they are let down by the way they're actually placed into the world and the lack of actual customizability that exists within them. Super, super sad. Can I also take a moment to complain about the fact that literally just being inside of a mangrove swamp biome makes you too hot? I feel like this system doesn't match how reality is. Like, the way that I cool down should not be stepping 10 blocks out of the biome and then, oh yeah, actually things are very calm here all of a sudden. I feel like heat should be much slower to rise and faster to fall. But maybe I'm going back to the realism thing here, which maybe we shouldn't do when there's a giant pumpkin with a scythe chasing me. maybe we can admit that the realism was long since abandoned, and that's actually okay. Oh, he can go through the trees. Actually, the giant pumpkin guy brings me on to my next point here, which would have to be just how buggy this actually is. The bug with your graves being unusable was fixed, and thankfully only after a few days, but many others do remain. The combat feels janky, mobs spawn everywhere, and the only thing making that better is the fact that the mob AI breaks regularly, leaving this horde of bears surrounding my former corpse, while only a single hostile samurai guy seems to be following me. But the fact that most mobs don't remember their job is the only thing that makes the number of them any more bearable. And then also keep in mind the fact that there aren't really mob despawns, which means eventually your performance is going to tank, or mobs aren't going to spawn, both of which are very undesirable outcomes. This is something that is very tricky to manage in a it's meant to be a challenging add-on, right? So I see the confines they're going within, but it just kind of sucks if you pay $10 for something that is then filled with all sorts of bugs that weren't present in the free version of the exact same thing. And ultimately, that is one of my big points I would remake about the Nether End and Underground. Every piece of marketplace content, even those charging $9 to $15, are deciding to cheap out on entire sections of content, which is disappointing. It's not a surprise that so many thousands of people are deciding to shell out, even at that price, but what is surprising is that they knew that many people would do it, and they still decided to leave about 2/3 of the dimensions worth of content, and personally, I think that is a bit of a shame, but it is something that is common for the genre, at least. We can't say that it's worse than any of their competitors, but we can still say that if you wanted a fun Minecraft experience that covered all of the dimensions, you're not going to find it here, simply put. But now it's time to move into the conclusion, because honestly, I've got to say, this is a sign that things are getting good on the marketplace. Despite all the negative things that I just said, I think dynamic worlds are a sweet spot because they have fun content that's unique and randomized, but they have more power and more access to your world than an add-on does, and personally, I think that this is one of the best, and I love the challenge. I cannot stress that enough. Despite all of the things that are negative, I think that this is one of the maps that does challenging, almost BS challenging, to the best that you can find right now. If you like challenges and don't like the idea of something basically just going into creative for me, then like me, you're going to have a blast. I've had around 12 hours or so of fun in RLCraft right now, and I could easily see myself just deciding to jump into it next week. I'm probably done with my stream series for now, but I love the idea that if they do add never end content, which we're kind of just hoping on the idea of, but if they do add new content, I would love to go and explore it, because even as it exists right now, I feel like it's a great, like if I was on a desert island and had 15 hours a day to play Minecraft, I would want a healthy number of those hours to be in RLCraft, and that is something that is, I think at least quite the compliment. However, I would say that there is quite a high price for the content that exists. Seriously, $10 becoming the standard is something that I think is really disappointing, and we can't necessarily blame Honeyfrost. People are clearly paying for it, and also there is a high price that exists because of the name. Obviously, this is really good news for Shivaxi. I hope that you're getting paid, by the way, but I think that the name doesn't reflect the content in the slightest, but it's still then well pulled off pieces of content. So can we be mad at the price and the lack of content and the bugginess and all this sort of stuff? I think that it kind of depends on where you're coming from. If you're looking at $10 as objective value relative to the Java edition, I think no, you're not going to get it. But if you're looking at it compared to other things on the marketplace, there aren't many things out there that exist in this same sphere that are as good. One that I think is being recommended by Minecraft a lot is Bedrock, and so maybe I'll have to give that a try and see if it's night and day by comparison. But my final thoughts are that I think RLCraft is decent, but just a little unpolished, and I think this is something that's possible to be fixed with updates, but as it exists right now, I would say if you are, you're price sensitive, you're thinking that you could spend the $10 elsewhere, maybe you just should. But if, like me, you love a challenge, this is the best you can get for it. It could be $20 and I would say it's worth it, because you will get many hours of fun and many hours of pain too. But if that's what you want, if you want a little Minecraft sadism, this is the only map that exists right now for you, at least in the dynamic world space. And so with that said, I hope that you all enjoyed this review. If you did, like it and maybe subscribe. And remember that you can check out the live section of this channel to see my full playthrough of RLCraft and how, well, then great, then disastrous, then kind of okay, that actually went. And indeed, if you want to see my better on Bedrock, which will be my next marketplace challenge, make sure to subscribe with notifications turned on. I don't know how to recommend that you see streams, but if you've got the notifs turned on or you check out the community posts, you should be able to see them. And yeah, I'm looking forward to finding even more of these because, yeah, as it turns out, RLCraft pretty darn good, even if it's worse than its Java counterpart in some ways. And that is something that I'm loving to see. One day, we will see the surpassing, we'll see the idea of getting content that is like super, super, super good. And I love that about the marketplace. The standards are always going up from whatever the heck was happening in 2017 to now. And it's cool to see. But speaking of cool to see, I hope you all enjoyed, because I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.